In a video on YouTube I was looking at recently, posted by Professoranton, there was this really lovely idea, and I do love coming across a new concept that I haven't come across before. I can't remember the reference for it, I'll check when I get home. But it was something like it was to do with the meaningfulness of language, and the meaningfulness of concepts, I guess, in relation to questions and phenomenology. And the idea was that an expression, a sentence, a linguistic expression, becomes meaningful, or is only meaningful, when you can think, when there is in principle or in practice, a question which would elicit that expression as a response. So the word blue, for example, this is how I'm thinking of it, the word blue is meaningful as an expression, provided I can think of questions which would elicit that response. What colour is the sky? What is the colour of most people's eyes in Scandinavian countries? What colour does cheese go when it moulds? Yeah, there might be a whole series of other questions. But those would tend to elicit this response, blue, and the meaningfulness of this response is predicated on my ability to formulate questions, as I say, which would elicit that response. Which is a great idea. I love that idea. I've had a lot of fun for myself thinking about that idea. But one of the things I've just been thinking about was in relation to meaningless expressions. I guess I'm thinking about expressions which are grammatically correct and which seem to have content, but which when analysed probably don't. The kind of things that Wittgenstein talked about, and that Chomsky, I suppose, is associated with. And here I'm thinking of that sentence that I think Chomsky came up with as an example of a sentence which is grammatically correct, but semantically empty, which is something like, invisible green thoughts sleep furiously, which is a bit like an exquisite corpse type sentence. All of the sentence passes into the right parts of speech and makes sense grammatically, I suppose, but it doesn't make sense literally. Or there's no. It seems very hard to think what kind of a question might elicit that as a response, if I'm borrowing from that idea. When I was thinking about that, though, I was reminded about when I've talked about that particular sentence before. I've never been able to remember it. I'm still not sure that I've got it quite right yet. Invisible green thoughts sleep furiously. Something like that. The last time I was talking about it, I went and I looked at it on Wikipedia, and there was a write-up of it, and assigning it to Chomsky. And also there was some information about how some time ago there'd been a competition, or a series of competitions, in which participants were invited to do a piece of writing, to write a paragraph in which that sentence featured, but the context of the paragraph would allow that sentence to make sense. This is a great idea, and the winner of it was a fantastic sentence. I can't remember what the whole paragraph was, but it was something to do with gardening and the existence of seeds under the ground in winter, and how those seeds that are under the ground in winter, when we think about them, they have this potential, and they're kind of pregnant with the possibilities of next spring, and they're dormant right now, but that dormancy is a highly dynamic dormancy, full of this potential and this pregnancy, as I say. And of course the closing line of that paragraph was that under the ground, invisible green thoughts sleep furiously, which is brilliant. I just thought it was fantastic, and it's so poetic and so it's a kind of artistic. It becomes a piece of art, I suppose, for me at least, or it becomes a piece of overt poetry. But I think for me it becomes a piece of overt poetry, partially at least, because of that translation from a sentence that was meaningless into a sentence that is meaningful. Or it's about the kind of linguistic context that's set up by the preceding sentences, the preceding ideas to do with seeds and the future and expectation and all those kind of things. How that little constellation of ideas sets up a framework in which a sentence which would otherwise be meaningless just suddenly acquires meaning and just kind of bursts forth as a meaningful expression and kind of draws forth the question. There's no way of formulating a question which would elicit that response prior to coming across that paragraph, prior to reading those sentences which preceded the one about invisible green thoughts. Yeah, I'm not quite sure where I'm going with this video, but what's interesting to me there is to do with the possibility of the transformation of the inconceivable, the unquestionable, the response that cannot elicit a question, to the suggestion, the possibility, the hinting at kinds of questions which would make sense of the expression. And I suppose I'm thinking of it in kind of art and poetic and literary terms, and that effect that Professor Anton signalled and drew my attention to, which I'm very grateful for, that effect in which the meaningfulness of a sentence is brought about by the possibility of ourselves to formulate questions which would elicit that question, that expression as a response. How that ties into, I guess, the kind of aesthetics of questions and the aesthetics of this kind of pause in comprehensibility, and then that comprehensibility being, if not filled, at least suggested of the possibility of filling. I'm not really sure if I've captured what I'm thinking about there, but there's something in there that I'm quite interested in right now.